I have been a nurse for 28 years. I'm Navajo from Tuba City, Arizona. Coming to the reservation, I had to readapt and relearn many things that I learned in nursing school. There are a lot of problems on the reservation. They have not really gone up to where they should be, because we as Indian people who have formal educations, we do not do that job. We do not ask and pick the brains of the doctors who have vast knowledges about cures, about all the medicine that they have. And then the nurses that knew new technology, they learn new things, and we don't ask, how do you do this? What does this mean? What does this disease do? Are there any answers? My dear Indian people, that's you and me. We are the key. If we want our patients to be responsible for their care, then we have a job to do. And it is very important for us to know, how are we going to do this? How shall we do this? How are we going to teach our people, especially the people who do not speak English? It is foreign to them, all the new diseases that come upon the people. So it is our job to find out specifically and exactly what they are, so that we can impart this knowledge to our people. And it is very important, and it is needed. That's number one, how to establish rapport. Number one, always shake hands with the people when they come in. Navajo people, and I'm sure that a lot of Indian tribes from all over the world like to shake hands. When we greet our Indian people, for instance, we give them too much information all of a sudden. And we forget, a lot of our Indian people have a certain greeting. And we forget to say, greet our old people, the old ones especially, because these are the people that do not know how to speak English. And we are the tongue for these people. We are the tongue for the physicians and the nurses who come to our reservations. And we forget to say who we are. It's very important for you, when you introduce yourself to a Navajo or to an Indian of any kind, because everyone wants to be recognized. They want to be recognized by, let's say here we have an old Indian couple that come in, and you say, in Navajo or in your language, you say, hello, all is well, or it is well. In Navajo, we say, yat-e. To the old couple, grandparents, we say, yat-e-che, yat-e shamasana. The mother, we say, yat-e shama. And then we don't say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Begay, because we don't recognize each other that way unless the people have been to school and have a formal education. Otherwise, we say, well, if you know that they have been formally educated, then you say Mr. and Mrs. or hello, Betty. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. Sometimes you can say, Yat Eshamasana, and go ahead and shake somebody's hand. When they come to the clinic, you don't just start asking questions. Always tell them why you're doing something, why you are teaching them, why you're asking them a lot of questions. Indians naturally don't trust you because you know that you're going to reveal all the information to somebody else. And sure enough, you know, somebody in the clinic, they meet, maybe their relatives are working there somewhere. Oh, I heard that you have this, or I heard that you're going to have some kind of surgery, and the patient is very surprised because somebody revealed that. And they do not share a physician's system of expectation. Therefore, they are not used to observing and remembering the types of things a physician or nurse wants to hear. They don't remember. If you ask them, well, when did the pain start? This is the worst place to start when you're going to ask questions. When did the pain start? Oh, 40 years ago, I fell off the horse. And then about 5 years ago, I fell between the buckboard wagon and my leg was hurt. Well, what's that got to do with your diabetes? And so it's very important for you to listen. The first time, listen very well to them. Don't interrupt and don't hurry them, because you know they'll get up and walk out. Because they say, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about, you know, because they're thinking very strongly right now, I got to go home to my medicine person. I'm going to ask them why this thing came upon me. Because the physician says, I don't know what causes diabetes, but you have it. Great value is placed on a good listener. And traditional Indian people, they'll sit there very silently, and you want to get on with it because you got maybe 50 other patients waiting. Traditional Indian teaching encourages silence in communicating. Silence helps to formulate thought. They just, unless they are seriously ill or unless they have a formal education, they'll come right up and say, look, I've been here 3 hours and you haven't seen me, or something like that. But most traditional people, they'll sit there silently or until they fall off the chair, and then you realize he's very ill. And a person who interrupts, interjects, or hurries repetitively toward abrupt conclusions are perceived as immature. I always say, yesterday, when did your pain start? Yesterday, where did your pain start? This is because I don't want them to say 40 years ago I fell off the horse. So, so you, as a translator, you have a little more control that way, instead of, because the doctor's standing there tapping his foot and says, I gotta get going, you know. And so here you are, you're stuck with a patient and that wants to start 40 years ago. And it's very important. And the regimen of treatment, you cannot trust patients to take their medicines on a given time schedule. For example, if you say, take these 3 yellow pills with your meals, that's assuming that they eat 3 times a day, but our Indian people, they love to socialize. Even at my house, now I'm a nurse and I'm aware of diabetes. Anybody that walks in my door, I'm going to put a coffee pot on for. And don't all show up at the same time. But the Indian people are like that. They put the coffee on. They'll put anything before you. This is hospitality. So here's your Indian diabetic, and he's going to go visiting today. Maybe he's visiting 5 families and ate 5 meals, and he's taken how many pills? Maybe he's overdosed by now. Or maybe there's an Indian family that you have that doesn't have anything to eat. And you say, take this with your meals, and maybe you ate twice today, and he's underdosed. So the thing to do as the patients who do not speak English, mark how many pills you should take for the baby, for children, for grandparents, and for parents. And if they have to take 2 pills, you just mark that in the morning and evening. That is very simple for them. And then they can tack that where they can see that every day. And then they also want tangible service. When they go to their medicine man, they will get herbs, and they will also be told, you go see this medicine person. He will treat you properly. And when they go to that medicine man, they will be treated with herbs, maybe with a prayer. But when they come to the hospital, they want a shot. It doesn't matter what kind of shot, just so they get a shot. And years ago, when I first started, a patient came up and says, well, I got a pain up here in my head. And the doctor says, well, here, these are aspirin, and they'll help your head. But that medicine's going to go down this way. It's not going to go up to my head, so therefore it cannot help me. But I want a shot, so it'll help me. Well, it took a long time to convince him that the pain, the aspirin does help headaches. So when you realize that when you have to communicate with your patients who are very traditional, they have their own ways of thinking how they should be treated. And if you don't give them a shot, they'll go away very disgruntled. And next time they come, say, I don't want to see that doctor. He doesn't treat me right. The older doctors usually is the favorite ones because they are considered very wise by now, and which the medicine people are. They are counselors, they're wise, and they say very good prayers for you. I've done a lot of teaching. I finally realized why they really weren't receptive, and especially for nutrition, let's say. They have all these kind of goodies. They have vegetables, they have fruits, and they have all kinds of other foods. We don't tell them what's in that food. What kind of vitamins, carrots, what's carrots good for? We don't tell them that. We just tell them, well, you should have half a cup of this every day. Why? Tell them why. Carrots has good carotene. Carrots has these kind of vitamins. They're good for your eyes. And show them exactly how much. Give them a cup if you have to, and say, this is half a cup. I want you to have this much every meal. Don't just say, well, you're supposed to reduce this, eat less. What does eat less? Eat less of what? So it's very important for you. Everybody says, every time we discuss diet, they always say, no fry bread. People think we eat fry bread 3 times a day. We don't. And so everybody says, well, don't eat fry bread. Don't eat too much fry bread. They're so locked up in their mind with fry bread, you know. All Indian peoples eat, all they do is eat fry bread. And we don't. You say, well, you eat your own traditional Indian foods. Go out. Go out to the camps and see what they do eat. Sometimes in our Indian language, we don't have literal words. When you translate, you have to explain, exercise. We don't have a literal word for exercise, just one word, but we have to explain it. When we say exercise, doctor wants you to exercise, then we say, well, when you move your limbs. And most of the time, we think of young people who are into exercise, and old people say, well, I can't even move my arms, I got arthritis. Well, what the doctor means is, do you walk at all? Some people still herd sheep. Some still go for their horses. They hunt their horses or their cattle. Do you do any type of this exercise? It's very, very important for everybody to work together. We do not have enough time for ourselves and our Indian people to be really serious about responsibility. We do not tell our patients how to be responsible for themselves, and we just tell them in the Indian way sometimes. They think you're wishing them bad if you say, your foot may be amputated. Instead, say, people with diabetes have problems like these. Because Indian people, a lot of them will say, he's wishing bad on me. I don't want to listen to that person. Don't be negative. It's important for CHRs and driver interpreters to really be, if you want, as a healthcare provider, train your translators correctly. Because this driver went out about 100 miles where the patient lived. The doctor had told him, now, you know, we sent this specimen away, and it was from an ocular biopsy. And it came back cancerous, and it's a dangerous one, he said. You better go out there and tell him, this patient, that I want that patient to come in. Well, this driver went out. And he says, when he got there, he says, they want to take your eye out. What kind of translating is that? And the patient refused. This doctor should have sat down with the translator and explained the situation, and then have the translator go out and explain to the patient, the doctor would like to see you. And the biopsy that was sent came back, and they want to explain that to you instead of right out, they're going to take your eye out. You know, I wouldn't go either if he told me that. An appreciative comment on his making the appointment reassures the patient that he had made the right choice, and it helps his acceptance. Don't say, "You're late again. You didn't make your appointment." Indian people, if they have a ceremony at home, or if they have a sing, or maybe they're building a home, these things take precedence over an appointment. I used to do orientations for the physicians when they first came to the reservation. I set up orientations where they spent what we call Navajo Hogan weekend. I would assign 2 to herd sheep and 2 to, I would give them an appointment slip and say, okay, you go to the hospital, your appointment is at 10 and yours is at 2 o'clock. And they go off and try to find a ride, or maybe they try to find a horse, or maybe they will try to get to the highway so they can get there and see if they get there on time. And then others I assigned to go haul the water, and then they would chop wood and set the fire and then bring the water in. A real typical Indian life, no electricity, no nothing, no newspapers, no radios, no nothing. And so within the last 5 years, I quit that because all the physicians don't make good sheep herders. They lost all the sheep, so I don't do that anymore. But it is very interesting for all of the Indian people to really orientate their staff so that they can really find out what Indian life is all about out there. And the physicians that supposed to make their appointments at the hospital, one never got there. And then the other one dragged in there by 4 o'clock, and all his feet were blisters. So, you know, they understood then. Internal illness is thought to be supernatural. There's no explanation that you can give an Indian when he says that. Especially diabetes. If you tell them you have diabetes, and then the patient says, well, what's diabetes? What causes diabetes? And the first thing you say, it is unknown. So how are you going to convince this patient they have diabetes if you don't know? And what are you treating if you don't know what causes diabetes? If you have an anatomy book, point to them, to the place where the pancreas is, and say, we think, or your condition, or a condition that when a person gets diabetes, this is where the problem is. Show it to them. Showing them, and then they will believe. Work with the patient so they will be positive. Say, you know, you can live a long life, because, you know, grandparents, they like to live a long time to live with their grandchildren, with their children. They like to see what they accomplish. So say, if you want to live a long life, grandmother, I want you to do these things so you can live a long life. It is difficult to separate the healing practices from religion. It's very important for you to know as a physician or a nurse that you cannot just treat the person. It's very important for you to realize that this Indian patient that has come to you has a grandmother and a grandfather who are medicine people. If you tell them that they have diabetes, they will return to the reservation or to their home and tell the family, because they have extended families, and they will say, well, the doctor told me I had this disease. And so they will have a sing or some prayers. So that way then they have holistic healing, and maybe they will have a positive outlook. If they are not permitted to have these sings or prayers, then they will just be stuck there. The total healing of the body, mind, and soul of an Indian patient is not complete if the patient cannot participate in ceremonies. And that's very important, especially when they are quite ill and the doctor says, well, you know, you got to have your gallbladder out. Or this is so serious that you cannot go home. Tell them to bring the medicine man to the hospital and say prayers there. If that's so important, tell them that. And because we see the priest come in, we see the ministers coming in to say prayers for patients, why not the Indian medicine person? It is time for us to work with Western medicine. It is very important. We want to try all cures, all the help we can get to help cure the people. And so therefore, I think it is also very important for us as Indian people to help all our healthcare workers, primary care providers, to come into our homes, to help and see our ceremonies. I don't mean that they have to practice our ceremonies, but let them see. Let them come and try how you heal, because we learn about Western medicine, how it works. But how does our medicine work? How can they help us so that the medicine people and Western medicine can work together to benefit the patient? Isn't that what we want? We want all Indian people to be well and to learn how to be responsible and to be motivated, how they can live a long time so they will have gray hairs.